This is the latest materialist answer to the failure of the origin of life studies. This is out of the New York Times, and it's entitled, very good, Ron, the title of this one is Why Nothing is Truly Alive. That's the title of the article. And what is life? Science cannot tell us. Since the time of Aristotle, philosophers and scientists have struggled and failed to produce a precise, universally accepted definition of life. To compensate, modern textbooks point to characteristics that supposedly distinguish the living from the inanimate, the most important of which are organization, growth, reproduction, and evolution. But there are numerous exceptions. In the 1990s, a group of scientists tasked with helping NASA find life on other planets devised a working definition of life, a self-sustaining system capable of Darwinian evolution. Even this phrase does not satisfactorily identify life. Consider a virus, a bit of DNA or RNA encased in protein that hijacks a cell to make copies of itself. Viruses are incredibly efficient reproducers and certainly evolve. The same is true, though, of many larger parasites that everyone agrees are biochemically, why my printer skipped this, agrees are living. Biochemistry, can have biochemistry, and they go on to list some of these intestinal worms, vines that suck sap from other plants, and so on, certain fungi. About 10 years after serving on the NASA panel, I'm skipping part of the article. They're talking about one of these researchers. Mr. Joyce embarked on experiments that further deflated the agency's working definition of life. That's NASA's definition. In the lab, he and his colleagues coaxed into existence two rather unique molecules of RNA that can indefinitely make copies of one another by stitching together sequences of nucleotides that are building blocks. 4 billion years ago, the Earth's primordial soup, similar self-replicating RNAs may have spontaneously formed from linkages of free-floating nucleotides. As naked pieces of RNA, they are even simpler than viruses, and because they can reproduce and evolve, Mr. Joyce admits that they too meet the definition of life. Yet he hesitates to say they are alive, because we're just talking about molecules now, DNA and RNA molecules. Why so much ambivalence? Why is it so difficult for scientists to clearly separate living from non-living and make a final decision about ambiguously animated viruses? Here's the answer. Because they have been trying to define something that never existed in the first place. So there you have it. Or in coming up with an origin of life, we don't need to worry about the origin of life because there is no life. Life is something that doesn't exist. It's out there with dark matter and with space aliens and abominable snowmen and all the other things that are hiding from us. And that's pretty disappointing. This is an article also out of Uncommon Descent. It's a world-famous chemist tells the truth. There's no scientist alive today who understands macroevolution, evolution on the large scale, speciation, not microevolution, adaptation. Professor James M. Tour is one of the 10 most cited chemists in the world. He's currently professor of chemistry, professor of computer science, professor of mechanical engineering and material sciences at Rice University. Has co-authored more than 489 scientific publications and so on. He's got good credentials. On Tour's website, there's a very revealing article on evolution and creation in which Tour bluntly states that he does not understand how macroevolution occurs. Quote, although most scientists leave few stones unturned in their quest to discern mechanisms before wholeheartedly accepting them, when it comes to the often gross extrapolations between observation and conclusions on macroevolution, scientists, it seems to me, permit unhealthy leeway. When hearing such extrapolations in the academy, when will we cry out, "The emperor has no clothes"? I simply do not understand chemically how macroevolution could have happened. that does not, does anyone understand the chemical details behind macroevolution? In 2012, a Georgia Tech professor Tours went further and declared that no scientist that he has spoken to understands macroevolution, and that includes Nobel Prize winners. Here's what he said when a student in the audience asked him about evolution. Quote, "I will tell you, as a scientist and a synthetic chemist, if anyone understands macroevolution, it would be me, because I make molecules for a living. And I don't just buy a kit and mix this with that and get that. I mean, I do it ad initio. I make molecules. I understand how hard it is to make molecules. For me to say, I don't understand this, is it okay for me to say I don't understand this? Is that all right? I know that there's a lot of people out there who don't understand anything about organic synthesis, but they understand evolution. I understand a lot about making molecules. I don't understand evolution." And you would just say that, wow, I must be very unusual. Let me tell you what goes on in the back rooms of science with the National Academy members and with Nobel Prize winners. I have sat with them, and when I get them alone, not in public, because it's a scary thing, I say, if you say what I just said, I say, do you understand all of this? Where all of this came from and how this happens? Every time that I say that I have sat with people who are synthetic chemists who understand this, they go, nope, I don't understand it. These people are just so far out, are so far off on how to believe this stuff came together. I've sat with the National Academy members, with Nobel Prize winners. Sometimes I will say, do you understand this? And if they're afraid to say yes, they say nothing. They just stare at me because they sincerely can't sincerely do it. I was once brought in by the dean of the department many years ago, and he was a chemist. He was kind of concerned about some things. I said, let me ask you something. You're a chemist. Do you understand this? How do you get DNA without a cell membrane? How do you get a cell membrane without DNA? How does all this come together from this piece of jelly? We have no idea. We have no idea, I said. Isn't it interesting that you, the dean of science, and I, a chemistry professor, can talk about this quietly in your office, but we can't go out there and talk about this publicly. Mm-hmm. If you understand evolution, I am fine with that. I'm not going to try to change you, not at all. In fact, I wish I had the understanding that you have. But about 7 or 8 years ago, I posted on my website that I don't understand this. And I said, I'll buy lunch for anyone who will sit with me and explain to me evolution. And I won't argue with you until I don't understand something. I will ask you to clarify, but you can't wave your hands and avoid the question. Where the molecules are built. Nobody has come forward. The Atheist Society contacted me. They said they will buy the lunch, and they challenged the Atheist Society, go down to Houston and have lunch with this guy and talk to him. Nobody has come down. Because I'm just going to ask, when I stop understanding what you're saying, what you're talking about, I will ask. So I sincerely want to know. I would like to believe it, but I just can't. So, I thought, there's so many other, this is a great piece out of the Nautilus. Evolution, you're drunk. Now, Nautilus is mainline, Nautilus is a very well-respected mainline science journal. And I was really surprised to see this in Nautilus, but Evolution, you're drunk. DNA studies topple the ladder of complexity.